All right, sorry about the late start. We better get rolling because this hour is going to roll by pretty quickly. So this is the homeschooling movement's fastest growing communities. So welcome everybody. We've got an excellent panel for you. My name is Ron Matus. I'm the Director of Research and Special Projects at Step Up for Students. We are the nonprofit down in Florida that administers the state's school choice and education choice scholarship programs. I am going to be co-moderating this panel with my colleague Lauren May, who's the Director of Advocacy at Step Up. The organizers told me I had like a minute, maybe two to frame things, so I'm going to do that in just a minute. But first, I'm going to give you a reminder of the run of show. So first I'm going to do my little ramble, and then Lauren is going to introduce everybody. Then each of the panelists is going to have 7 to 9 minutes to do their presentation, tell you all about themselves and their corner of the homeschool universe. Originally, we were going to have enough time for both Lauren and I to maybe ask a question or two, but I think after what we saw with some of the other panels, we're just going to skip that, and we're just going to go straight to the audience questions so you guys have enough. And if you don't have enough, then we'll revert back to some of the questions that we had. So that's the run of show. So here's my 1 minute ramble. So I told the panelists this when we met last month, and I'm going to tell you guys the same thing. I probably know less about homeschooling than anybody else in this room, but I think I know that enough to say 3 things are true that's going to course through our entire conversation. So first off, we all know homeschooling is growing. It was growing even before the pandemic, and certainly it took a huge spike during the pandemic. And it's continued to tick up even after that in most places, according to the research I've seen. So that's number 1, it's growing. Number 2, we know it's growing more diverse. I don't know enough to know whether the old stereotypes about homeschooling being mostly white and Christian and conservative was ever true, but it's certainly not true now. It's more diverse in terms of race, in terms of religion, in terms of political affiliation, in terms of multiple dynamics. And then last but not least, I think it's fair to say that homeschooling is becoming more diversified. So again, I don't know whether it was ever true that homeschooling was all about, mom and kids sitting around a kitchen table, but that's certainly not what it is today. I think all of the emerging models that we're also excited about, micro schools, learning pods, hybrid homeschools, a la carte learning with multiple providers, all of that is so tied up with homeschooling. So all that's going to be part of our discussion today. Our panelists know a ton about all of that, and with that, I'll turn it over to Lauren.
Good morning, everyone. We're so happy to have you here. So my job is to introduce our panelists. They're all wonderful. We're going to be going in reverse alphabetical order because all of us up here are teachers, and Ron will claim that he's not. He always says he's a newspaper reporter, but in reality, everyone is a teacher at heart. Everyone in here is a teacher, and all you have to do is unlock your potential, and I'm sure that all of you have taught somebody in your life something, maybe even today. You never know. So we're very excited. The group up here is so dynamic and so amazing. So I'm really excited for you guys to hear from them. So we're going to start. I am in charge. I'm sort of playing the bad cop today. I'm in charge of the time. I will keep us on time. I want to make sure you guys have time to ask questions. So as they're speaking, our panel is super diverse, and they all have a very different experience in the homeschool world. So jot down your questions while they're talking, and then if you have a specific one for a specific person, just let us know at the end. So we're going to start with Miss Sydney Milbert. Sydney is an educator with over 9 years of experience serving gifted and twice exceptional learners through her work at Athena's Advanced Academy, Gifted Homeschoolers Forum, and the Johns Hopkins Center for Talented Youth. She has taught in so many different learning environments, including in-person and online classes, and she's a homeschooling parent. She holds a master's in gifted special education and certificates in effective needs, motivation, and executive functioning of twice exceptional students. She serves on the board of the Organization of Virginia Homeschoolers and has written extensively about education for the National Association for Gifted Children and for the Gifted Homeschoolers Forum. So we're super excited to have Sydney. She's representing the state of Virginia, so if anybody's in here from Virginia, give her a shout. And Sydney, take it away.
Okay, I don't know if
She does have some slides, and I don't know.
I don't know how to get them started.
There we go. We've got some slides. Which one?
Oh, I can't. The one, yeah, right there. Nope. Bottom.
Where it says gifted, twice exceptional.
Yeah, the bottom middle.
Keep going.
One down.
This one right here. That one.
Nope,
Right
one
here.
more.
Yeah.
That one.
Can't read that far.
Okay, you got it. Okay, thank you, Lauren. As she said, my name is Sydney. I am a teacher and a homeschool parent.
Can you guys hear her?
I think, no?
You got to talk into the mic and project.
Okay, hear me now? Okay,
Yes.
so thank you again for having me and that introduction, Lauren. I am a teacher of my own children and others through various organizations. I had a tough time deciding on my affiliation for this conference, and so that's why I have my title that I do. But most of my work is focused on gifted and twice exceptional homeschoolers. So what I wanted to do first is sort of give you an overview. I'd like to... Yep. I think it's on the right. Oh, yeah, no, that's right. Okay, so I wanted to answer, or at least begin to answer these questions. Who are gifted and 2E homeschool learners? Why are they choosing to homeschool? What are the resources that they're using in their homes and otherwise? We just learned about hybrid and blended learning, and so a lot of that happens. And then how do they measure success, which is what we're all talking about here at this conference. And then finally, I'll give a little where do we go from here. So to start out, who are they? So let's define a little bit about what gifted and twice exceptional means. First of all, I just want to say that every learner, gifted, twice exceptional, otherwise, every single one is unique. They all have interests, passions, challenges, strengths that are their own. However, as a definition, gifted means to have high academic potential. That potential word is really important because every gifted kid, even if they've been identified, isn't always going to have straight A's. They're not always going to be what we think of as like the teacher's favorite student, but they have that potential. This used to be measured with IQ tests and other things like that. It's not as much anymore. There's all kinds of different measures that schools and psychologists and other individuals will use, but the potential for high academic success is there. And then the twice exceptional piece means that the child or adult is gifted and also has a learning challenge, like it could be dyslexia, dysgraphia, or even autism or ADHD, anxiety, things like that. And then for sort of what we see in this population, the biggest thing that I think you'd probably think of would be early and rapid learning. So it's the 3-year-old that shows amazing understanding of math or learning to read. But then from there, there's also this really important piece of asynchrony. And that's sort of like a defining characteristic, I would say, that all of these kids have. Because it is that young child who is doing something that's advanced for their age. And it could also be in an academic setting where they are very able to do high-level math, but they still struggle with something like handwriting. And so there's asynchrony even in a classroom. And then the final thing, I don't want to get into too much of the weeds here because I do want to keep on time, is this idea of masking. And masking it can be intentional or not intentional. For intentional, it could be a kid that it knows that they are bright, but they want to fit in. They want that social aspect of feeling like they're everyone else. And so they will hide it. They won't try. They might underachieve. But for the unintentional side, you might see a child whose learning disability or learning challenge makes it so the teachers or the adults around them don't understand that they do have that high academic potential. And so they're not challenged. And you may say, excuse me, you may see like behavior issues in a classroom. And things that you would treat or support differently than you would a child who needs higher academic challenge, because you just don't know that it's there. So that brings us to why are these families and students choosing to homeschool? So the Washington Post and the Schar School, I'm not exactly sure how you pronounce it, did a poll in 2023 of families. Some of them were homeschooling, some of them were not, but they divided the data up into homeschooling and otherwise. There's a bunch of different questions. I'll show sort of a reference of where you can find this information if you're interested later. But so the thing that stood out to me in this data was that about 30% of these families said that they chose to homeschool because their schools couldn't or wouldn't meet their child's learning needs. It didn't go into details of what those needs were, but these could be kids that are those who need special education services, whether it's for dyslexia or autism sort of diagnoses or things like that, but they could also be gifted students who aren't being challenged enough, or it could be the kids who are both twice exceptional. And when we think about this, I put this bell curve up here because I think it's a nice visual to see that in the middle, of course, we have the general classroom instruction, and then on both sides, only 3 minutes left. Okay, on both sides, we have gifted services and special education services. And especially for those kids who are twice exceptional, if they need both, it's really hard for them to get it. I'm gonna try and go fast. So basically, homeschool families are using a ton of different resources. They do everything from subject-based curriculums at home to all the way up to attending college classes. And in the interest of time, I'm gonna keep going. So how are they measuring success? Homeschool families as a whole will focus on sort of the mastery type of achievement. And what that means in practice is that once they can do something, they will move on to the next thing. They're not waiting around to like finish a school year's worth of math, for example. But it also involves sort of a deep understanding of a topic and real enjoyment of learning. Homeschoolers also use traditional measures of success. Some of them take standardized tests. Some of them take classes with outside providers, and they'll get grades from those classes or on various projects, things like that. And then a big thing from all homeschoolers, I would say, is they want their kids to be happy. They want them to love learning, and they want to be critical thinkers, learn how to learn, and that is something that is like an overall goal that I've talked to and heard from a lot of different parents. Okay, and finally, where do we go from here? So I have this little graphic up on my slide. The bottom right is meant to represent sort of the standard way we think of success and how we get there. So we see this straight line. You go from smaller challenges to bigger ones, and there's this flag at the end to indicate like I've made it, right? But for gifted and twice exceptional students, it doesn't always look like that. And so that's why I created this sort of like squiggly dotted line with different shapes and sort of those flagpoles that mark measures of success in different places along the route. And so that is what I would like to encourage you to think about as you think about this group of gifted and twice exceptional learners. And one more thing is that we don't have to start from scratch. There are models that work in classrooms, and we can sort of bring them home and to other places. And so there's the differentiated instruction model and the autonomous learner model. And I'll provide references for those if you'd like to learn more about them. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Sydney. Great job. Great job staying on time. I'm very thankful for that. All right, next we have the amazing Nicole Doyle. She's a very passionate homeschool advocate. She champions the parent as educator movement and is dedicated to producing resources for under-resourced families to create learner-centered environments at home. She served as the director of the Del Cab Christian Homeschool Educators, which is a homeschool co-op that has served in Stone Mountain, Georgia for over 36 years. She also co-founded the Georgia Black Home Educators Network, which is a collaborative homeschool network, and they host a really cool, if anyone hasn't been, the Flourish Family Homeschool Conference, which is a parent-focused training event in Atlanta. She currently serves on the board of the Eastside Academic Studies, which is a college prep focused for homeschool kids. And she coordinates a neurodiverse sensory lab that supports homeschooling families of unique learners. She collaborates with national and state advocacy groups, including the HSDLA, the Ed Choice, and Georgia Can. Her greatest role is with her husband, Willie, homeschooling their 4 children, 3 who are now in college. All right, Nicole.
I've been praying that the slide will come up. That's not my people. There we go. Hey, how are y'all doing? So, I want to start by saying, like, have you ever had a child to give you a really good scare? Mm-hmm. You're talking about that child that you look up there and go, oh my God, how did you get up there? Or that 3 o'clock in the morning where the child has a temperature of 102. Or what about that toddler who has the spirit of a runner? Like, it's not in his DNA to walk. And if you have avoided all of those, I guarantee you will have a teenager who never charges their cell phone, and you will be sitting in a parking lot late at night texting with worry, where are you? I am outside. So all those are laughable moments that we have had of worry at times, but you know, they're just moments. They are passing, they do not occupy your mind and your brain. But during the pandemic, we had an opportunity where parents were dealing with a lot of dread in reference to school. And so these parents were faced with so many uncertainties, and they began to notice, not that they didn't exist, they began to notice that their child was struggling, had some emotional anxiety, some unmet IEP needs, and there was some inequality in the discipline and the treatment of some students. So when these schools got ready to reopen, these intentional parents were looking back and saying, is it really a good idea for me to send them back? Is this a good fit for them? Do these kids even like, enjoy, or love school? And lastly, for me, it was, can this institution teach my child that they are wonderfully and beautifully made, even when in the midst of being disciplined? So we've all seen this data. Of that during the pandemic, homeschooling rose from 3.3% to 16.1%. And that data brought about a plethora of qualitative research. And so in the University of Georgia, Dr. Cheryl Field-Smith, she just put this book out, and it really details some of the issues that Black homeschoolers were concerned about at that time. We were concerned with racial biases and disciplinary disparities, that we wanted more culturally relevant and faith-affirming curriculum. There was a actual frustration with under-resourced schools who could not serve all the children, especially those who are 2E children. And then we had some issues with the urgent need for emotional, mental, and physical safety. I want to focus on that safety part. So these are some headlines from right here in Georgia that are recent. So mother fights discriminatory action against the school for the discipline of her child. The superintendent of one of our largest school systems said that AP, African American Studies, breaks the law. We also had a student in Georgia who was stripped of his special education services associated with an ADHD diagnosis. So that tells me that, so are you telling me his IEP is null and void now because he's in trouble? So when we look at these headlines, which probably are in other states, we focus on the question of safety with a lot of what we do. And so our parents are dealing with a fear that we got a warning from Carter G. Woodson, a graduate of Harvard, class of 1912. And in 1933, he said, to handicap a student by teaching him that his black face is a curse and his struggle to change his condition is hopeless is the worst sort of lynching. It kills aspirations and dooms him to vagabondage and crime. Vagabondage, you are not contributing to society. Now, if we replace that black face part, we're going to replace it with to see that their ADHD diagnosis is a curse. Their autism diagnosis is a curse. Poverty, their neighborhood, or even their religious practices are a curse. This can apply to many students. So we are Georgia Black Home Educators, and so we are a collaboration of organizations. And I said, well, you know, we have the news headlines, we have some qualitative and quantitative research, but I wanted to ask our group, what do they really think and what do they really believe? So over the course of the last 2 months, we just kind of sat down and started asking parents in our group. And so if you look here, you see our mission is to envision a future where all under-resourced families are able to homeschool well. That's one of the things. And so we have a homeschool cooperative, that's the CAP, Christian Home Educators. They're celebrating year 36. I was group lead number 7 of the group at the time. And so we have a homeschool community. I want to clarify, homeschool community meant that there's more than one homeschool group, but they're sharing the same building. We have a homeschool hybrid. That's that teaches college prep. And this last arm is our non-accredited, non-traditional educational center. And so this is accredited. And so this is a way for us as parents. We do have, I would say, parental self-accountability, transcripts and things. And so we've had students, over 200 graduates, who've attended Harvard, Dartmouth, MIT. And so these are our homeschooling kids. But I wanted to ask our community a couple of questions, and those questions were, why do you homeschool? And before you start homeschooling, did you personally know of anyone else that was homeschooling? So when we were looking at these 33 families, this is the data that we basically came up with. And so the top answer there was that 9 of our families really did want a faith-based education. I can't tell you how many mamas said to me, I just want my baby to know the Lord. That literally was a statement. I wrote it down because I was like, okay, I have 9. I want my baby to know the Lord's. So, and then after that, we had parents who wanted a customized education that represented diverse representation, and the child is 2E, and there's the there's also various parts of the schooling that they were like is important to us from a traditional aspect. There was emotional safety issues, a variety of things, and you can see there. But one of the things that came up after we were sitting down looking through everything was that most of our parents, 29 of our 33 parents, said that they really did want safety and identity came up a lot in that. And so we kind of distilled it down to saying that our parents wanted to make sure they enforced an identity and a faith tradition that understood their lineage and had a deep resilience that political and societal arguments cannot damage. And that was the main thing that our parents wanted. When we look at the group of parents, we start talking to them about how many of you knew someone who was actually homeschooling. And everybody said they intentionally sought out someone to homeschool. And so this is at the CAB Christian Home Educators. We actually have a homeschooling fathers group so that dads introduce that to other homeschooling dads. My husband was not helping with homeschooling at first. I took him to this meeting, and they were like, hey, so why aren't you teaching math and you're an engineer? So, so I haven't taught math in years, praise the Lord. So, and then, of course, we have the moms that get together. But I want to say what is possible. What is possible is that we have parents who are doing all these things. We're bridging the technology divide. We are doing workforce development. And, of course, this is our group. I want to get to what is needed. So what is needed most right now, I feel like our community needs more homeschool incubators. I have been here and heard people talk about microschool incubators, charter school cohorts, and fellowships. But I'm going to be honest with you, we need some homeschool incubators. We need places where homeschooling to me is a logistical and a financial privilege. It is never in the urban communities, and it is very rarely in some rural communities. So I am looking for partners who would like to make this available within the community. We firmly believe that if we equip parents, empower families, we can build and strengthen our community. At the end, she did talk about this is the Flourish Family Homeschool Conference, and this is our 4th year. We have about 350 attendees of this conference, and we get into the day-to-day basics of homeschooling. We talk to parents about how do you take an IEP, turn into a student education plan? How do you, as a homeschooling parent, create an NCAA transcript? How do I onboard my child into scholarships, internships, make sure they're getting the appropriate supplies? How do I discuss this with the public school system to get the diagnostic test that I need to be able to make sure when my child leaves homeschooling, because I have a junior at Morehouse, his 504 can follow him to the university. And so that is all I have. That was the extra slide just in case I had time.
Thank you so much, Nicole. That was amazing. And finally, we have Kimberlee Tucker. She's the founder of the Homeschool Hive. She's an educator and homeschool advocate. She's a seasoned educator with 30 years of experience, including 14 years dedicated to supporting homeschool families. She founded the Homeschool Hive in Tampa, Florida, which is a retail space for families to access connection, curriculum, and expert advice all under one roof. So if you ever visit Tampa, make sure you put on your list to visit the Hive. The Hive also features a comprehensive in-person and online store offering curriculum, educational games, books, sensory tools, and other thoughtfully curated resources to support a diverse set of learning styles. In addition, she leads a team of Florida-certified teachers who provide home school evaluations, standardized testing, and personalized consultation services, all of which can be paid for using the Florida scholarships. So that's pretty interesting. Kimberlee is passionate about helping families homeschool with confidence. Her mission is to make the journey joyful, enriching, and full of meaningful community. So Kimberlee, tell us a little bit about what you do.
Yes, good morning. I love homeschooling. It's my passion. It has, I fell into it. I fell into homeschooling through my daughter. My daughter in 4th grade, she is neurodivergent. She was struggling. She was actually failing in the school system. And she said, "Mom, can you homeschool me?" And I was like, "Where did you learn the word homeschool?" But we took a leap of faith and headed straight in. And let me tell you, she went to school from 4th grade, homeschool, till she was 22, because in Florida, she can school until she's 22. And it was the best decision I ever made, both for my child and for my professional life. Sophia just needed the time to be able to go through her studies and life and learning at her pace, not at a pace that is done at school, because we have to. When we're in public school, we have to have a pacing guide. But when you homeschool, you get to tailor your experience for your children, create a love of learning, and pace it where they are, where you meet your child where they are. And it's a beautiful thing. So that is how I became involved in the homeschool world. So let's go to the next slide. So here we go. Tailored learning, limitless potential. So homeschooling is, I always say it is what we thought was the future, but is the now. The future is now. It's happening. We have an army of people that homeschool their children throughout the country that realize the potential, the, again, love of learning that this can create for their family, the culture that they can create in their home, teaching their families, teaching their children about their morals, their values. It goes beyond academics. It creates a bond with your children that is like none other, that you have those children, your children at the table or in your living room all day long, every day, and you are pouring into them, not only academically, but emotionally, socially, and it's just a wonderful thing. I get so excited, I get tongue-tied, because it is the wave of the future, the now. So let's go on. Okay, so we went backwards. Here we go. Okay, so I want to talk all about Florida, because that is where I know the most statistics, and that's where I live. And in Florida, our homeschool rates have gone up. We have about 155,000 homeschoolers in the state of Florida. But this actually is a little skewed low, because we have scholarships, and I'll get to that in a minute. Just what Ron and Lauren are representatives of Step Up for Students. We have ESA scholarships in the state of Florida that have allowed the numbers of people to be able to afford the luxury, as you said, Nicole, the luxury of homeschooling now can happen in Florida. And so those numbers, remember that 155. And let's see, that's really small, but what that says is Florida HEF, the Florida Home Education Foundation. Okay, something really cool is in 1985, the Home Education Statute was founded. So since 1985, we have been legal and following the same statute that is in place for all homeschoolers. And it is a beautiful statute that allows for both freedom for homeschoolers and checks and balances. And it's a great combination for accountability, but freedom. So in the statute, a homeschooler must complete an annual portfolio. So they keep a portfolio of just their subjects that they've done, field trips, their learning. They keep that. Then at the end of the year, they have choices. They can either have a certified teacher look at their portfolio, and you have a celebration. It's based on progress, not on a blue book of numbers. So it's based on progress. So any child, whether it is a child that is maybe gifted or a child that is a struggling learner, it's all a celebration on how far their accomplishments have come in a year. Or we can do standardized testing by a Florida certified teacher. And standardized testing is, as you know, can show a parent maybe where a child is having success or where they need some more academic support. And the beautiful thing about homeschooling is your academic support is right there in your family room with your mom or your dad or your grandparent. And it is one of the things that separates Florida from many states is this amazing statute that we have. And it was created by Brenda and Craig Dickinson, again, in 1985. And then I want to show you 2 minutes. Oh no, I have to keep talking quick. Okay, so we have so many cool things in the state of Florida. We have all different ways that kids can learn. We have co-ops. We have homeschool dances. We have field trips. We have people coming in and sharing their expertise to students. We have co-ops. We have micro schools, pods. There is a plethora of resources and learning that happens throughout Florida. It is amazing because we have an army. So an army of students means that you have more resources and more ways to educate your child in a way that they're going to remember and love. Step Up for Students. Okay, these are some big numbers. Remember I said the back in the 155? All right, Step Up for Students. We have a unique ability scholarship. That scholarship has 75,000 homeschoolers on it. Okay, then we have the PEP scholarship. PEP is a personalized education plan. It is in its third year, and it allows school choice. And 80,000 homeschoolers are on that. So that's why I said the number of 155 is not quite correct. That is just homeschoolers that are schooling through the county, through opening up a home education through the county. So we have these huge numbers. Step Up for Students guides our families in keeping the money in an account, and then they may use it for educational purposes, for therapies, for anything, Legos, anything educational that you can think of. And one of the things that's amazing, I'm going to wrap it up with going back to Sophia, my child who is on the spectrum. She was on the Unique Ability Scholarship for about 10 years. And it afforded me to be able to offer her therapies that I would never have been able to afford, that she would have never received in the school system. And along with allowing her to follow her special interests. Special interests for a child on the spectrum is a very big part of their world. And I was able to use my funds through the scholarship for that, to allow Sophia to make amazing gains and become the beautiful person that she is today. And
All right.
that
Thank
is
you
it.
so
And I'm
much.
sorry I went over, and thank you for listening to me.
All right. Awesome. So we're going to open it up to you guys if you have any questions. Does anyone have a question for the panel? Yes, ma'am. Do we have a microphone? I don't think you're supposed to shout. Hold on. Take the extra. Hold on. I will bring you a mic. Here you go.
Thank you all so much. This is really great. I've had the benefit and privilege of talking with Nicole a little bit. I'm pretty familiar with the Florida program. I'm really intrigued, and I don't know if there's ESAs in Virginia or not. I didn't think so. So one of the things I'm really interested in is the impact of programs like ESAs and vouchers on expanding and diversifying the homeschooling community, and then what some of the barriers and obstacles are in terms of families who are identifying as homeschooling tapping into those funds. And Nicole, if you want to start out talking about Georgia a little bit, because I know this is an area of a little bit of passion for you, but I also did want to point out what Kimberlee said, which is that families in Florida who choose the PEP scholarship are actually living under a different statute than the 1985 homeschool statute. And so this division a little bit of families that use ESAs and families that don't, I just wonder what that's doing in terms of the overall homeschooling community.
Do you want to go first, or you want me to?
Sure, because, well, as far as like Georgia go, we do have ESAs, but the ESAs are not for homeschoolers. Not for the traditional homeschoolers. So if you are a public school child and you were in the public school for a complete year, you're able to leave the public school and access the ESAs, or if you have a student that's in kindergarten. So when you look at the numbers with the new ESA bill that came out, most of the students who onboarded into private school or into any type of homeschool program were really kindergartners, going from kindergarten to first grade. Many of the other students who were there were parents who were probably looking for something different. There were several people who we just applied because, of course, we wanted to make sure they saw the numbers. And some of us knew we would not, make it through the application process. But we wanted them to see how many there were available who really wanted these opportunities. At this present moment, there's a lot of conversation where they do not trust homeschooling parents or parents in the state of Georgia to make these decisions. I mean, we have our organizations are almost 40 years old, and it's multiple of us who have been doing this for a long time, children who have matriculated into college, and we do have an accreditation that we go through that's for a non-traditional education center. Many of you know Kanisha Skaggs from SOAR. She started out as a non-traditional education center. I'm not really positive. My fourth child is a ninth grader. I'm not positive that we would get it before she graduates from high school, because I feel like it was a slow walk to get here. And I really feel like when they're looking at the metropolitan Atlanta area, one of the politicians, she actually said, I do not believe that my parents have enough intelligence to be able to choose the appropriate education model. And I'm like, but you felt like they had enough intelligence to vote for you. So I am confused, by that statement as we had our discussion, but we're just going to keep on working toward it.
Yes.
Oh, no, she
Oh
she
yeah,
worked
you
as
had
she had
a
a two-part.
part two.
Yeah.
So the part two was about the scholarships, and you're right. The PEP scholarship does not fall under the statute. And in the beginning, and it's only been 3 years, it was very scary. And we, a group of homeschool educators, we made sure that there was a really strong separation between opening up a home education program the traditional way, following the statute, and then the name personalized education program versus home education, to have the separation. So the personalized education program children have to take a standardized test. They do not have the option of just having a portfolio evaluation. So that is a difference. But what I have found, the Homeschool Hive works with thousands of families across Florida. What I have discovered is the families are okay with that. They're okay with the measure. We just don't want it to change. So that's something that we have to be very aware of and cognizant of throughout time, as we don't want big changes. So we want the freedom for homeschooling, but we don't want those standardized tests to then be, you have to reach XYZ to stay on the scholarship. Does that make sense? Because then we're just doing public school at home. And we don't want that.
All right, thank you. Next question.
Hi there. My question is about resourcing for homeschools. Just my experience is I own a private academy, and it's a choice upon choice, because the parents first choose a private school during the day. So they've already made that choice, and then they come to us further to enhance their education even more, but they pay a lot of money for that ability. So we recognize with all the changes of digital education being available, all the tools, we could democratize ourselves and offer our programs at very, very low cost to all kinds of students. So in the United States, what would be the best way to make people aware of those very inexpensive but very productive and efficient educational tools that they can utilize?
Do you want to take it? You want me to? Okay. That's a great question, and that is, I think, where you would, as an owner of this business that you have, the best way to get any word out is homeschool Facebook pages, Instagram, TikTok. That is how homeschoolers communicate in the masses. We no longer have put an ad in the newspaper. Nobody looks at that. So it's just barraging those that this is offered.
The 150,000 scholarship kids in Florida know about Aunt Kiki from Homeschool Hive because of her presence on TikTok and Instagram.
Yep.
And we have a portal through Step Up for Students where families can go and buy things using their scholarship, and the Homeschool Hive is an option where that they can use to use their scholarship dollars and buy things.
Yep.
So there's a lot of different ways that you can do it. But in Florida, we have our scholarship dollars, but
Yep.
they also use Facebook, Instagram, TikTok to reach those families in different ways.
Exactly.
I would say another way is to be a part of grassroots organizations, to literally, personally, when you attend a homeschool co-op or an event in person, maybe even go to the homeschool co-op and say, well, I would like to offer a one-time workshop to introduce the parents to it. Because these are intentional parents. I need to see what you do. I need to see how you do it. I need to experience you as this passionate educator. And so even though I may see something on Facebook group and everything, which, we are all about some Facebook groups, putting in, when I see the title free, I don't know, it just like, oh, I'm gonna at least go look. Yep. But obviously, you're a business. You're not trying to be free the whole time. But there's always that introductory piece. So I would say definitely start looking out for a couple of those grassroots or events. Also, a lot of people don't realize, like a lot of homeschool group families, they spend a lot of time at church. Like, put an ad in the church bulletin. Vacation Bible School, it's ran by the homeschool mamas. It's like, come on. So like you can, come to some of those events and kind of put ads in there, and then you can get possibly more homeschooling parents.
I have a thought on that. Let me real quick. Okay, so Nicole just made me think of something. So there are conferences, conventions all over the country. So Florida has one that's called the FPEA, thank you. There we go. And it is the largest homeschool convention in the country. And you can get a booth and have a booth there, but they are all over the country. That's just Florida. So start looking up conventions for homeschoolers as well. Okay.
Okay, I was going to say something along the same lines. I serve on the board of the organization of Virginia Homeschoolers. So we are a statewide organization that supports homeschool families, but we also serve a really important role of connecting those families with providers, probably like yours. And we have a website where you can place your information, and we do have a conference as well. So you could have a workshop or a presentation, something like this. vahomeschoolers.org. Sure.
Thank you. Appreciate you all being here. My name is Anna, and I am wondering, when you think about a homeschooling family, let's say they're homeschooling from kindergarten to 12th grade, what do you think are 2 to 3 of the top challenges that they are going to come up against over the course of their learners' trajectory?
And answer it in 10 seconds or less.
Patience.
Try to get one more question.
Patience, a virtue from the Bible. So patience, long suffering. Let's just be honest. A lot of times I've found that some of the parents, the way they're approaching education, it really has to do with, are you willing to go through the ebbs and flow of teaching your child? It is a day-to-day work. And yes, there are so many resources out there and all those things, but that's why we feel like the reason why we've been around so long and have done so many things and had such great success is because we pour into the parental agency part of building your confidence, giving you a system of resources, helping you to figure out, personalize what you need. So number 1 is patience.
And accessing your resources, your community, creating a tribe that you can utilize when you're at the challenge points in your child's career. And those happen all the time. And it could be anything from the curriculum's no longer working. Why? This curriculum worked for 4 years. Why all of a sudden isn't it? Well, guess what? The beauty of homeschooling is you can change it. You can change it mid-year. You can, you adapt. And then we also teach based on mastery, just as Sydney had said. So we're learning until we don't just learn and then dump it. We're learning to become lifelong learners. So that would be creating and going with your tribe and having that support system would be number 2.
I would say, as someone who went through public school all through my own education, the biggest challenge for me as an ongoing thing is sort of comparing what I'm doing with my kids to my own education and feeling like maybe this isn't quite right. Maybe it's not matching up with everyone else's experience. And so I think thinking about that, you have to really focus on your own child and what they need. And of course, look towards their goals, whether it's going to a college or going into some career, and thinking about those long term, but also looking at them right now for where they are and meeting those needs every day.
All right, one more question.
Thank you. Hi, I'm Susan. I started a micro school in Vermont, and our students are all homeschoolers. And I love this idea of homeschool incubators. And I'd love to hear all your thoughts on how we can create more off-ramps for folks who are interested in homeschooling or want to homeschool.
So, actually, when we were sitting in group, the parents and I was at the homeschool co-ops, one of them said, I don't understand why there aren't more places that are just saying, let's start this, because it's very interesting. DeKalb Christian Home Educators, they literally have like 6, 7 homeschool groups that was started off of them. Actually, even one of our parents actually is starting a charter school. And everything. So they move into different spaces. So the incubator portion, I do feel like it needs to happen. And I go back to the Vacation Bible School model of just, we literally have a moment during the summertime, and we've done this, where there's a week where the homeschool parents can come, not just homeschooling parents, new parents, they come into our facility and we sit down with them over the course of that week, and they can come back in and ebb and flow in to talk about homeschooling. Their kids come to events and everything. One of the things that we also do is with that annual conference, that is a moment to get into the nuts and bolts of homeschooling. And everything, but we do, Georgia Black Home Educators, we're starting a new initiative. It is the Flourish Learning Communities, and we say flourish because we believe that every family can thrive in this if given the opportunity. I want to make something clear. So we are a parent as educator movement. That does not mean that I'm telling everybody to homeschool. I personally believe that if a parent had the opportunity to really understand what an educator is experiencing and actually get to know their child, they will walk a path to pick the best model. We have never, my last slide that I didn't get to was, how many forms of school have our homeschoolers touched? Mm-hmm. And some of us, because we have multiple kids, I mean, my sister has 7, I have 4, I got people who have 13, 11 children, and we are literally touching various models. We have never been anti-public school. From a cultural standpoint, many black communities, we believe in education as a mode of uplift. Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And so we are walking those pathways. But I think with some parents, they're frustrated with what's available to them. And we want to make sure that they're able to look at an opportunity to provide them with agency. Now, agency means that agency is only embraced through financial resources, knowledge, and access. Let's be honest, because you can have all the choice you want to, but not $1, and you're not going to do it. So let's just, so if you want to talk more about educational incubator, homeschool incubators, I'm available.
Okay, and actually, I was wrong. We actually have time for one more question. I know Bill has been dying to ask it, so Ron, will you bring that microphone up here, because he's been so patient.
Thanks. I had a question about students with disabilities, and it seems like there's a lot of families with students with disabilities who are choosing homeschool. Mm-hmm. They're oftentimes giving up access to specialized instruction, mm-hmm. and are happy with what's with the outcomes for their kids. Are you all thinking about that? Like, is there a larger conversation going on to, maybe extend access to services for families that are choosing that path?
It's something that a lot of homeschoolers struggle with, because when you're in a public school system, at least in Virginia, you do have access to those specialized providers, whether they're therapists, psychologists in that school building or in the region where you are. But as soon as you leave that, you don't have access anymore. So you don't even get the testing, let alone the services. And so especially in rural areas, where you're far away from your district, it's a real challenge, and I don't have the answers to it, but I do know that families are sort of able to do things at home in a different way. So for example, I used this example yesterday. I was talking to someone in a classroom for a child who has sensitivities and they need to move to learn. A teacher might ask them to go in the hallway, in a regular classroom, to not disturb others. But when you're at home, you can just let your kid walk around the house, and that doesn't cost you anything. And obviously that's a pretty simple example, but there are accommodations and modifications that you can make at home that are, of course, there are costs associated with a child staying at home with a parent, but it is inexpensive to do in your home.
Mm-hmm. So from the Florida perspective, Florida having the scholarships, so the unique abilities for children that you're just talking about. So autistic, we have children with Down syndrome, all the way to dyslexia, ADHD. The funds that are would have been used in the public school system are what are put together for the ESA for those children. And 85,000 homeschool students, you're right. They have some sort of exceptional need, and they are able to access things like the therapies, all of the extras that are needed, ABA therapy, all tutoring even, to help the child have exactly what they would have and more.
And more.
At home versus in school. But there are states that don't have ESAs. So I understand where you're coming from. We have 25 states, I believe, now that have ESAs, though. So it's becoming its own movement to help. Yeah.
So,
In Florida, I should add this really quick.
Yeah.
In Florida, those ESAs for students with special needs average about $10,000 each.
Yeah, and I
sorry.
would just say one thing that I'm really excited about is the federal tax credit program, because we're hopeful that that's going to unlock some opportunities for states that currently don't have a program, because now you do have the ability to lock into this federal money that is available if you can convince your governor to opt into the program, which we're hopeful that many will. But that is, to me, going to hopefully open doors for more families that haven't had that option like they do in Florida. But in Florida, we're already looking at, okay, how are we going to work with that program? So we have families that have the $10,000, but for many of them, that's still not enough because they need more money for those ABA therapies. So what are we going to do? We're going to stack those dollars on top of their already existing scholarships. So what are the states that don't have scholarships going to do? They need to figure out how they're going to convince their governors to opt into that program.
Speak to being a state that. So we're a state where we do have something called the S10, and that's like special needs scholarships to go to maybe a homeschool co-op who's been accredited in a certain type of way. But what we have done at our homeschool co-op, especially I think it's the high school hybrid Eastside Academic Studies, we were noticing that a lot of students were coming in homeschooling students new, coming in when high school age. And so these are students who need those supports. So we started the Neurodiverse Teen Sensory Lab. And so what it is that homeschooling parents are very sensitive to being labeled. So what we decided with this lab is that we approached it from let's start with the parent perspective. And so we sat with our parents and basically actually worked with a micro school. We worked with Tiffany Ferguson of the Tiffany Blessingame of the Ferguson School, Dr. Maya of the NIA School, that is for all autistic children. And so these providers have come in to do workshops in the homeschool co-op so that the parents can be in the midst of it, experiencing that. So over the course of weeks and parents discussing, we finally got to the point where the parents were like, can you help me to craft a letter to send to the public school system to get my diagnostic testing? Yeah. That's what we're trying to get to the point of. We want you to be a parent educator. We want you to be a parent advocate, because this process is long. There are many checkpoints you're going to have to pass. If you do not have the knowledge and the confidence and those who are supporting around you, you'll go, I don't want to do it. And then you'll end up in my situation, where I literally had a freshman who was in college having several issues his first freshman year and realized we didn't have everything documented on a 504. And so I had to go ahead and make sure I accessed a 504 quickly. Thank God for Morehouse Medical School. They jumped in there and helped me to do that because they're right next door. But that's when we decided to come up with this program, because several of us were realizing we walked the path the long way when we need to be doing it in the beginning.
Can I just say one last thing?
I'm so sorry.
Based on a lot of the questions that have been asked, Florida has done it. So we are.
We did not pay Kimberlee to say that.
We are at the forefront. The state of Florida is at the forefront in homeschooling. So any questions that you have, start looking at Florida, because we've probably already done it and have done it successfully. We have just an amazing network of support for homeschool families. And so I encourage you, check us out. Give me a call, homeschoolhive.com. You can email me, hello@thehomeschoolhive.com. I'll be happy. I love to talk homeschool.
Thank you guys so much. We appreciate you joining us.
Thank you.
Learning.